Ferdinand's first blue ribbon and Mrs. Periwinkle's first grumble. The blue ribbon felt stiff and unfamiliar in Barnaby's calloused hand. Ferdinand, oblivious to the honor bestowed upon him, contentedly chewed his cud, a champion bull with the appetite of a field mouse after a particularly long winter. The Ferris wheel cast long, skeletal shadows across the fairgrounds as Barnaby led Ferdinand back toward the trailer, the prize-winning bull's heavy hooves thudding a rhythmic counterpoint to the distant calliope music. Back home, the celebratory mood evaporated like morning mist. Mrs. Periwinkle, arms crossed so tightly her knuckles were white, stood on the Buttercup's porch, a disapproving gargoyle sculpted from floral print fabric and tightly wound indignation. "That thing has been mooing incessantly all afternoon," she declared, her voice a pinched whine that could curdle milk. Barnaby's father, usually jovial, looked apologetic. His mother wrung her hands in her apron. "Now, Agnes," Mr. Buttercup began, but Mrs. Periwinkle cut him off. "It's disturbing the peace, Harold. This is a residential neighborhood, not a farm. I have a luncheon with the garden club tomorrow, and I simply cannot be seen with bags under my eyes because I was kept awake by some bovine bellowing." Barnaby stepped forward, the blue ribbon clutched in his fist. "He's just happy, Mrs. Periwinkle. He won a blue ribbon at the fair. He's a champion." Mrs. Periwinkle sniffed, a sound like air escaping a punctured tire. "A champion nuisance, more like. This has to stop, Harold, or I will be forced to take action." She punctuated her threat with a sharp nod, then turned on her heel, her floral skirt billowing behind her like a storm cloud. The slam of her screen door echoed in the sudden silence, a stark contrast to the gentle lowing of Ferdinand, who seemed to sense the tension in the air. The HOA notice of doom. The official envelope arrived mid-afternoon, crisp white against the weathered wood of the porch swing. Barnaby's mom picked it up, her brow furrowing as she read the return address, Periwinkle Estates Homeowners Association. Inside, the letter was typed in severe, unwavering black ink. Barnaby's dad read it aloud, his voice growing steadily angrier. "Violation notice. Unapproved livestock, excessive bovine vocalizations demanding immediate removal of Ferdinand." The words hung heavy in the air. Barnaby felt a cold dread creep up his spine. "What's a homeowners association?" "It's a group of busybodies," his mom said, crumpling a napkin in her hand. "They make rules about everything, from the color of your mailbox to the height of your grass." His dad pointed a thick finger at the bottom of the letter. Signed, Agnes Periwinkle, HOA President. "Mrs. Periwinkle?" Barnaby whispered, remembering the pinched face peering over the fence, the disapproving sniff. "She's got a real bee in her bonnet about something," his mom muttered. "Thinks Ferdinand's ruining her view of it." "I don't know, the pasture." "But Ferdinand hasn't done anything wrong," Barnaby protested. "He just moos a little." "Apparently a little is too much for Mrs. Periwinkle," his dad said grimly. "They're threatening fines and legal action." Barnaby's heart sank. He looked out at Ferdinand, peacefully grazing, oblivious to the impending doom. He wouldn't let Mrs. Periwinkle take him away. "We have to do something," he declared, a newfound resolve hardening his voice. "I'm not losing Ferdinand. Operation Quiet Ferdinand." "Hush now, Ferdinand, hush little bull," Barnaby crooned, his voice barely a whisper. Ferdinand, a week old and already the size of a small pony, chewed contentedly on Barnaby's offered hand and mooed louder. The sound vibrated through Barnaby's chest. Lullabies, it seemed, were appreciated but ineffective. Next came the barn. Barnaby, bless his heart, had spent all morning hammering together a structure he hoped would contain Ferdinand's booming voice. It was more of a shed, really, lined with old blankets and hay bales. Ferdinand, curious, wandered inside, sniffed at the padded walls, and let out a triumphant bellow that shook the whole construction. Within 2 days, Ferdinand had outgrown it. Desperate, Barnaby purchased a bag of bright pink earplugs from the feed store. Approaching Ferdinand cautiously, he held one out. "Easy, boy, easy. Just gonna pop this in your ear." Ferdinand, suspicious of the strange pink things, shook his head, sending the earplugs flying. Barnaby tried again, only to have Ferdinand playfully nudge him with his massive head. Barnaby stumbled backward, landing in a pile of hay covered in pink foam. Ferdinand, seeing Barnaby's predicament, let out a long, mournful moo as if apologizing for the chaos. Barnaby sighed. Quiet Ferdinand? It was proving to be an impossible task. The dart heard round the farm. The afternoon sun warmed Barnaby's face as he leaned against Ferdinand's flank. The bull chewed contentedly, a rhythmic counterpoint to the buzzing of bees in the nearby clover patch. Barnaby closed his eyes, letting the peace settle over him. Then a sharp crack shattered the tranquility. Ferdinand bellowed, a sound ripped from his throat that sent a flock of starlings scattering. He stumbled, his massive legs buckling beneath him. Barnaby scrambled up, heart hammering against his ribs. "Ferdinand! What is it?" The bull pawed at his side, a dark stain blooming on his usually pristine white fur. A dart, feathered and wicked-looking, protruded from his flesh. Ferdinand collapsed, a low groan rumbling in his chest. Barnaby ripped the dart free, his hands shaking. He looked up, searching for the source of the attack. Mrs. Periwinkle stood at the edge of her manicured lawn, a dart gun dangling from her gloved hand. A thin, satisfied smile stretched across her face. Her eyes glittered with malicious triumph. "Problem, Barnaby?" she called out, her voice saccharine sweet. Barnaby stood frozen, the dart clutched in his trembling hand. The injustice of it all, the sheer brazen cruelty, choked him. He wanted to scream, to rage, but the words wouldn't come. He could only stare, a silent promise of retribution burning in his eyes. Ferdinand groaned again, pulling Barnaby back to the present. From dart to dollars, the $1 million lawsuit. Ferdinand spent the night at Dr. Gable's clinic, hooked 2 and 4 drip. Barnaby couldn't sleep, picturing the tranquilizer dart sticking out of Ferdinand's flank. He kept replaying the scene in his head, the thwack of the dart, Mrs. Periwinkle's smug expression. By morning, Ferdinand was bleary-eyed but standing. "He's a tough one," Dr. Gable said, patting Ferdinand's massive neck. "Just keep an eye on him." Back home, Barnaby, his parents, and even his usually unflappable grandmother marched across the manicured lawns to Mrs. Periwinkle's pristine doorstep. The doorbell chimed a cheerful melody incongruous with their grim purpose. Mrs. Periwinkle answered, a clipboard clutched to her chest. "Yes. You're paying the vet bill," Barnaby's father stated, his voice tight with restrained anger. "And apologizing to Ferdinand." Mrs. Periwinkle's lips pursed. "Apologize? That piece terrorized me. I nearly had a heart attack." As for the vet bill, she adjusted her glasses, peering down at her clipboard. "My lawyer will be in touch. I am filing a lawsuit against the Buttercup family for $1 million, citing emotional distress and negligence in allowing a dangerous animal to roam free." A collective gasp rippled through Barnaby's family. $1 million? Barnaby felt the blood drain from his face. Ferdinand, grazing peacefully in their backyard, looked up, chewing thoughtfully. Divided town, united bull. The lawsuit news spread through Harmony Glade like fertilizer on Mrs. Abernathy's prize-winning petunias. Quickly and pungently. Barnaby heard snippets everywhere. At the post office, where Mrs. Gable glared at him over her spectacles. At the bakery, where even Mabel, who usually slipped him extra cookies, just offered a tight-lipped smile. The town was cleaved in two, Periwinkle supporters on one side, Ferdinand's faithful though dwindling on the other. Barnaby felt smaller with each passing day, the weight of the lawsuit pressing down on him. He sat on the porch swing, watching Ferdinand graze peacefully, oblivious to the impending doom. The bull's gentle snorts seemed to mock Barnaby's helplessness. He wished he could shield Ferdinand from all of this, protect him from Agnes Periwinkle's wrath. Desperate, he retreated to the dusty attic, determined to find something, anything, that could help. He rummaged through old boxes filled with forgotten family heirlooms and yellowed documents. Suddenly, a brittle, leather-bound book caught his eye, Harmony Glade HOA Regulations Revised 1952. He blew off the dust and flipped through the pages. There, nestled between rules about acceptable lawn ornaments and mailbox heights, he found it. Article 7, Section B. Livestock exceeding miniature breeds are strictly prohibited, unless deemed to contribute significantly to community beautification and approved by a 2/3 majority vote of the HOA board. Could it be? A loophole? A chance? Ferdinand Appreciation Day. Ferdinand Appreciation Day, Barnaby declared to a trio of wide-eyed squirrels. He'd spent the morning painstakingly crafting miniature invitations, each adorned with a hand-drawn daisy. The squirrels, predictably, absconded with them. He sighed, then refocused. He needed help. He found it in Mrs. Higgins, the baker who promised Ferdinand-shaped cookies, and young Timmy, whose talent with a glue gun was legendary. Posters bloomed across town, vibrant against the drab HOA-approved beige. Barnaby even managed to slip one onto Karen's mailbox, despite her perpetually suspicious gaze. The day before the event, Barnaby worked tirelessly on Ferdinand. He brushed his coat until it gleamed like polished mahogany, braided wildflowers into his horns, and even attempted a tiny bow tie quickly abandoned after a near stampede. He whispered reassurances, feeling Ferdinand's warm breath on his cheek. "Tomorrow, everyone will see how wonderful you are." That evening, Mayor Macmillan called. Her voice, usually warm, held a careful note. "Barnaby, dear, I admire your spirit. But be prepared. Not everyone is receptive. Karen, in particular, has filed a formal complaint about the gathering. Something about disrupting the peace and potential bovine-related dangers." Barnaby's heart sank. Had he been foolish? But then he pictured Ferdinand, gentle and majestic, and his resolve hardened. "Thank you, Mayor. We'll be careful. Ferdinand will win them over, I know it." He just had to make sure Karen didn't ruin everything first. The video that changed everything. The air vibrated with laughter and the aroma of Mrs. Higgins' prize-winning apple pies. Ferdinand, adorned with a garland of wildflowers, patiently endured the adoration, occasionally letting out a contented moo. Barnaby, beaming, watched as even a few of the more curmudgeonly HOA members hesitantly approached Ferdinand, offering tentative pats. Mr. Abernathy, notorious for his complaints about lawn height, even cracked a smile. "He's surprisingly gentle," he admitted, adjusting his spectacles. Mayor Macmillan, ever the diplomat, worked the crowd, her booming voice carrying above the din. "See, Agnes," she said, approaching Mrs. Periwinkle, who stood stiffly on the edge of the festivities. "Isn't this lovely? Ferdinand brings joy to everyone." Mrs. Periwinkle merely sniffed, her arms crossed tightly. Then a hush fell. A phone screen held aloft by young Timmy Higgins flickered with a grainy image. Look what my dad found," Timmy shouted, his voice cracking with excitement. The video played, revealing a shaky shot of Mrs. Periwinkle caught on a security camera Barnaby hadn't even known existed. "That beast," she spat, her voice filled with venom. "Ruin my prize-winning petunias, will he? I'll teach him a lesson." The screen showed her raising what looked suspiciously like a pellet gun. One less bovine menace in this neighborhood. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Even Mrs. Periwinkle seemed stunned, her face draining of color. The mayor stepped forward, her expression grim. "Agnes," she said, her voice dangerously low. "What is the meaning of this?" The air, thick with the sweet scent of apple pie moments before, now crackled with tension, a storm gathering on the horizon. "Justice for Ferdinand." The courtroom hummed, a low thrum of anticipation that made Barnaby's palms sweat. He squeezed his mother's hand. "Are you sure this will work?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the murmur. His mother smiled, a reassuring warmth in her eyes. "We have the evidence, Barnaby. The truth is on our side." The video played, Ferdinand's peaceful grazing juxtaposed against Mrs. Periwinkle's shrill pronouncements and, finally, the shocking discharge of her stun gun. A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Mayor Macmillan, seated in the gallery, shook her head in disbelief. Mrs. Periwinkle, face flushed crimson, sputtered that bull was a menace. The judge, a woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, silenced her with a sharp rap of her gavel. "The evidence speaks for itself, Mrs. Periwinkle. Your lawsuit is dismissed." She paused, her gaze hardening. "Furthermore, I am ordering you to pay damages to the Buttercup family for the emotional distress and harm caused to their property." The relief that washed over Barnaby was almost overwhelming. But the fight wasn't quite over. A week later, Barnaby, his parents, and a surprisingly large number of their neighbors crowded into the HOA meeting room. The air was thick with tension. The motion to remove Mrs. Periwinkle from her leadership position was met with a chorus of ayes, loud and clear. The only dissenting voice was Mrs. Periwinkle's, now cracking with fury. As she was escorted out, defeated, Barnaby allowed himself a small smile. Ferdinand was safe and justice finally had been served.